I first of all, I hope your day's going well. I mean, how's everything going? Like, where are you calling from?
I'm here in London right now.
All right.
Yeah. Basically, I got kind of left stranded at Heathrow Airport and just
Oh,
kind of stayed in London. So there you
I've definitely been there, like literally in Heathrow and also stranded in Heathrow.
go. Yeah, it's not a pleasant feeling because nobody's friendly there. It's kind of like JFK. But there you go.
But it is beautiful though. It's like a mall almost.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, it's an airport. Um, it's, when you're worried about where you're gonna sleep tomorrow, though, you tend to like not pay much attention to that kind of stuff.
For real. Yeah. Context
Yeah.
is key.
Oh yeah.
So, Danny, I was telling you, Anthony reached out to me regarding, I guess, you were deported from the U.S.
That's right.
What exactly happened? You were the first British person deported
Under Donald Trump.
on Donald Trump's policies. Was it? What exactly happened? Just give us some more background.
Okay. Basically, I in 2014, 2014, I met a woman who, at that point, I thought was the most beautiful woman on planet Earth. Typical romance story. Flew over to the US, met her. She lives in North Carolina. I won't say any names because she doesn't know anything about this. But yeah, I came back a couple of times. We ended up getting married, but because she's already got 4 children, I started to take care of the family rather than my own interests, and I overstayed on a visa waiver.
Mm.
Arguably, I would probably deport myself. Um, you know, um, but yeah, I mean, we got married, we lived together, we were happy for the most part. Then issues started happening in the relationship. Um, she got a bit grumpy with me and kicked me out the house. I found myself in North Carolina in the middle of winter, and I mean, wow, you have brisk winters.
Yeah. Yeah, we do.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it where literally you've got rain coming out of the sky, and then it lands on the grass and kind of creates tubes around it. We have nothing like that in the UK. Frozen rain like that it's just so anyway, it was looking at being like minus 14 degrees C. I forget what that is in
It's really cold.
Fahrenheit.
It's like
Yeah,
zero.
it is. Yeah. It's heading that way.
Yeah.
And so basically I ended up I realized I can't stay out in the freezing cold in a foreign country. Sorry, no offense, but
That's all good.
America's a foreign country to me. But anyway, even though I have to tell you, I utterly fell in love with America. You guys have no idea how blessed you are. Familiarity does breed contempt, and when I see people waxing lyrical about how much they hate about America, I'm like, have you ever been? What do you mean you live there? Are you mental? But anyway, so yeah, basically, long story short, I started shouting stuff in the backyard and saying I was going to do terrible things in order to actually get myself arrested because I realized that if I was stuck outside in those kind of temperatures, I was not gonna probably make it. And that's just, I mean, it was just a very difficult situation. So I ended up getting myself arrested. Neighbors heard all the caterwauling and called the police. Police showed up, and I turned around and said, "Well, thank God you're here. Come on." Pretty much escorting myself to the car because I mean, I had no idea of what I was going to do. Um, I ended up getting myself arrested, put into the car. The police officers were laughing and joking with me on the way in. I posed no threat or anything to anybody. And then I ended up spending 3 months in 4 jails in 3 states. And it was a really eye-opening experience. I met a man who was being deported to Hawaii. Let that one sink in.
Deported to Hawaii.
Yeah, yeah.
That was,
He was actually in immigration jail. Okay, we were all in there, or each one of us was an immigration guy, and he was being deported to Hawaii. He'd been in there. I mean, I was in there. This is January 2016 now. Okay, he'd already spent 5 months in immigration jail. 6 is the maximum term you're allowed before they have to set you free. And he'd already been in there for 5 months, and they were going to send him to Hawaii. So I don't know quite how that works because that's a state of the United States. I met a guy who was a Native American. He was a Cherokee, and they were deporting him back to Mexico. And yeah, I mean, here's the thing: I saw what I saw was a bunch of people, most of them taxpayers as well, because I actually canvassed them. I just paid my tax. We just got it done whilst I was in jail, and so I decided I'm gonna find out how many people out of this pod. Pod is basically 50 people in a space. So I went around and I asked them how many of them have paid their taxes, and I would say 5 of them said no. You know, there are a lot of things that are being misspoken about illegal immigrants, which I was, you know. And then I'm seeing also a lot of things being said about immigrants in general. And some of these are people, most of these are people who've come over legally, and they are being spoken down to in some pretty rough ways. And that is something that I mean, look, for me, I was there illegally. Yeah, sure, kick me out. You know, when you've got people who are assuming that immigrant means illegal, then there needs to be a little bit of an education going on there. You know,
for sure. I want to dig in a little bit to the beginning of that story, because I don't know if I had caught it well enough. So you said, you met the most beautiful woman of your life, right? And
yeah.
y'all got married, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And you were here, I'm assuming, on a like a work visa or a just travel visa. What was the situation
Yeah.
there?
I came over on a visa waiver. We have this wonderful thing between Britain and America and Canada, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, so many other countries where, because we are technically allied nations, then we kind of give people the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, we're going to trust you people. Sorry, America, I broke your trust. Um, I'm not as, the plan was always to get my green card. But because um, I also believe in like parental responsibility as well. I was raised kind of well in that, and my ex-wife already had 4 children from previous relationship, and so I decided you marry the mother, you marry the kids too, so
Sure.
they're your responsibility now. So I was working technically illegally, but I had a tax code and I was paying my taxes. And so, I mean, that is like the great. It's like, okay, yeah, you can work illegally so long as you pay your taxes. Okay, that's
Mhm.
interesting. I've actually never seen that in anywhere else in the world, but good on America. Um, and so I was there, I was paying my taxes. I learned a trade that I'm now using here in London. I learned painting and decorating, and I can paint a room pretty quickly and make it look really sweet. So thank you to the guy who taught me that. Um, you know, uh, yeah. So I mean, basically, my situation was I'm a hopeless romantic. Didn't do my research correctly. Jumped in where angels feared to tread and got burned for it. Basically, I was in the U.S. for uh, about 3 years, 3.5 years on and off because of like coming back and going forward. Um, and uh, yeah, I mean, I utterly fell in love with America. Uh, and yeah, you guys, you've got a beautiful country. Like, really enjoy it. It's great.
We do.
I'm
We
actually,
do.
yeah, I'm actually not allowed back to the US for another 8 years. So that's
That might be in time
pretty
to come see
crazy.
the World Cup, though, so you'll be all right.
It
I,
would be if I liked soccer. I mean,
you don't
I'm a
like soccer? You're the only British guy I've ever met. You're a football fan. You're an
I'm a
American football fan.
Carolina Panthers fan. I mean,
Oh,
that's
Jesus.
basically my. I don't know if you are aware that during the '80s, American football or football had this really big thing in the UK, and my dad actually used to play tight end for the Leicester Panthers. So that was when I was about 5 years old. So I've been a Panthers fan since before I even knew North Carolina existed. So that just worked out kind of well, really. But there you go. Yeah.
They do exist. I always thought those NFL ambassador programs to the UK were a waste of time, but I guess there are NFL fans there. The
Oh
Jets were
yeah.
there a couple of years ago, and I actually like the 7 in like because we have to watch them at 7 in the morning. But
Uh-huh.
I actually love it. It's like watching soccer almost. You get to wake up at
Yeah.
7 and drink and do it. Just start the tailgate early. But what's interesting is that so when you reached out, you said that you were a Trump supporter. I
I
don't.
am. Yeah.
Neither Danny and I don't think. I think Danny takes a more negative stance on Trump. I'm kind of just
Mhm.
like neutral on him.
Uh-huh.
Um, so was it Trump's policy? Were you deported due to Trump's policy, or would you have been deported regardless if Barack Obama was
Um,
president?
I mean, let's have a look at some of the facts. The last time I actually uh, looked at this, Obama had still deported more people than Donald Trump. And in fact, before Donald Trump, if he gets a second term in office, yeah, he's most likely going to beat Obama's record. But until Trump, Obama was actually the president who deported the most amount of people of all the other presidents. So this whole, oh, you're racist if you're deporting people, well, then that makes Obama racist too. So that argument actually doesn't wash. And to be honest with you, I'm really concerned about what I'm seeing on the news when it comes to this whole race issue and how divisive it's actually become. Because from black friends, white friends, Hispanic friends I've got from America, one thing I'm finding is that actually, do you know what? People are done with race. People hate it. There's absolutely no point in it. And if we're not going to have bipartisanship in America, then we're going to see something that a pastor friend of mine once said, and he's an American pastor too. He said that America is going through what you could call a divorce. So you've got the mom who's soft hearted stands up and fights against all like possible attacks on her babies, and that would be the Democrats. And then you've got the dad who's bought himself an AR-15 with a sniper scope on it, and he's outside defending his family and his home, and that would be the Republicans. And if we're not going to see, I mean, basically what we need is we need a good politician on either side, don't care which, to stand there and be that that legal aid, which is the mediator. And people need to stop this partisan BS and actually realize that there are men, women, and children living in America right now who need a government that's actually going to serve them, not get caught up on a divisive issue and then close down the government so that daddy, who's a postal worker, can't bring home a check for a month. You know,
Mm-hmm.
That's I mean, that's not the narrative that's coming across the pond to the UK.
Agreed.
The narrative is Donald Trump is America's answer to Adolf Hitler, and he's a racist, and he's a Nazi, and he's going to lead the whole world to war with Iran. And
that might be true. The Iran part might be true.
I mean, okay. Here's the thing. It might be true, and there's nothing to say really on that, apart from the fact that America had the opportunity to get that all-important first strike, and didn't take it. And it was actually Democrats who were accusing Donald Trump of being a coward, even though he'd asked how many people are going to die for the sake of this $130 million drone, or however much it cost, and the answer was something like 185 people. And he said, well, that's just too much. It's not good. It's not right. America needs to win the hearts and souls of a world that became disenchanted after George W. Bush led the West into an illegal war. And Trump knows this. In fact, he campaigned on that. I don't know. I think if it does happen, it's going to be a mistake. Because now you've got Iran saying that they didn't shoot down a drone. So it's just like, it's a horrible mess. And I'm really hoping that wisdom will prevail and diplomacy can continue. Like, you know.
Well, with Trump and Iran, I think what really happened with him, he campaigned on being a non-interventionist. He said these wars,
Yeah.
He stated in South Carolina, which was your neighbor when you were here, which is there's a lot of military bases there. It's a military state. And he said in one of his campaigns that they lied us into the war in Iraq there. He campaigned on that. But at the same time, he campaigned on how bad the Iran deal was. And I don't know what's in his mind. I tend to speculate that what really happened with there is that he wanted to nail a hammer on an Obama foreign policy move. So he started hitting down the Iran deal. And I don't think he really kind of realized what it was and what it prevented and what was the meaning behind it. And him pulling out of the Iran deal kind of is leading to, it's not the only reason, obviously, but it's one of the reasons why things are so congested and weird and crazy in the Strait of Hormuz right now, why the escalation is up so high. But the racist stuff, I think, is stupid. I don't follow it. I think it's stupid. And I completely agree with you with the identitarian philosophy that a lot of people adopt on race. I think it's really, it's counterproductive. When you adopt identitarian philosophy, what you do is that you create almost like a cycle of violence that's inevitable. And if you look in the Middle East, for example, it's not a racial. Well, in some places there are ethnic identitarians, like the Kurdish areas. But the main things that we see is in places like, Iran, or not Iran, excuse me, in Syria or Iraq,
Mhm. Yeah.
are sectarian divides, and it's the same exact thing, Sunni and Shiite. When one group does they stick to some type of sectarian or identitarian nepotism, that's what really
Mhm.
causes the other one to lash out against the other one. When they get power, they're going to pay back the favor of any type of oppression.
Mhm.
So it creates a cycle of violence that's really, really destructive. And I think that people who adopt identitarian philosophy in the US, UK, any Western country, look at the Middle East as an example of how bad it could be to do that. Like, you don't want to be like, oh, as a black person, as a Mexican person, as a Chinese person, as an American, or as a British person, I would leave race and window out the window, or race
Mhm.
and
Absolutely.
religion out the window. So I definitely agree with you.
Mhm.
It's interesting that you brought up, though, the Iran, because right now the UK, it seems that there a lot of the tensions right now are being is almost like a back and forth cycle right now between the UK and Iran. With
Yeah.
the British first seizing that Iranian tanker on its way to Syria
Yep.
about a week ago, and now Iran. They tried
Mhm.
to, apparently they tried
Yeah.
to, and failed, and then now they
Now
actually
they've got
succeeded.
them. Yeah.
What's your take on that? I'm curious to hear, as a Brit who's obviously well informed.
We currently have a government that is so disorganized that it cannot carry out a democratically requested decision made by the people. We have a government right now that has woefully degraded our military, and this is something that I actually did think about saying this, and I think I'm going to right now. I think if the only players in the whole Iran issue were America and Iran, relax everybody, it'll be peaceful. Uh, Britain, I mean, Britain has been raping Iran for over 100 years. We went over there and we gave them a flat rate payment for their oil over 100 years ago. Okay, we've been ripping off, raping, and destroying. Well, okay, we've been ripping off and raping and destroying the entire planet, or at least two-thirds of it, for like the whole of the history of the British Empire. That's one of the reasons why I love America so much, was because you guys actually had the guts to cut off the old, give them the Spanish archer the elbow. Um, I think I think what Britain did off the Rock of Gibraltar, which is British waters, it's a British island, was something that had already been. I think the way I understand it is they were actually upholding a European sanction that was already placed on Iran anyway. Um, what Britain did, they didn't have to ask for any permission to do. Iran instantly said, "Oh, look, now you're just taking orders from Washington, D.C." And the fact is, Britain actually was probably going to do that anyway. And what it's done is because Britain is so close to America, militarily speaking, one looks like the other from an eye in that part of the world. The British flag and the American flag, they might as well be the same, or one on the front and one on the back, as far as the world sees it. So any act of aggression on the part of Great Britain is going to be seen as an act of aggression from the part of America. And if America is wise, diplomatically speaking, they should actually distance themselves from this tit for tat action reaction policy that's going on until diplomacy is actually properly given the is given the proper right. You see, the world has an opportunity right now to metaphorically let the weapons inspectors actually do their job. And what I mean by that is the Iraq war was begun before the UN weapons inspectors were able to even begin to write their reports. We had a weapons inspector who came over here and he was actually saying there are no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq whatsoever. This man, 3 days later, was found hanging from a tree where he committed suicide, apparently. Do I believe that Britain will underhandedly do things unilaterally in order to cause issues that are going to allow British weapons to be sold globally around the world to nations like Iran? Yes, I absolutely do. Do I believe that the current political difficulties between America and Iran are seen as an opportunity by Britain's version of the military industrial complex? Yeah, I really do. Do I believe that it could cause the Third World War? I hope that bigger players than Great Britain will be involved in making that decision, but I certainly do not think that we've done anything to help stabilize the situation. One thing you said with our involvement in Syria, I cannot forget, and I've got a terrible memory, but I cannot forget a BBC interview that was done just after or just before we were going to go over there and start trying to do things. So it was actually before I even came over to America. There was a Syrian soldier from the Syrian army, and he said, "What are you doing?" He said, "We sent you the Apostle Paul to lead you out of darkness and into light, and you send us terrorists here to kill us." This was broadcast on the BBC. I've tried to find the video since. It seems to have been gotten rid of. But we started ISIS. It was British and American money that started ISIS. Frankly, I think that President Trump knows this. I think that the British government knows this. And honestly, I really, really, really hope that America will actually be the voice of reason in something that could turn into something really, really ugly. All I can do is apologize for my country.
Well, a lot of the U.S., why there's a strategic interest there is not necessarily because of an American interest. It's more so for I'll just say the trope that everyone says, the military industrial complex, as well as our foreign assets in the region.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that's always been kind of the plan of America. I mean, if you look at America, it's actually the architects for the British political system and for the American political system and for the way that America is set out is Rome. And the Romans were incredibly clever. They knew that if we can sell our products into this world, we can grow our empire. You tell me one country or one continent other than Antarctica. Actually, no, I'm not even going to say that. You show me one country in the world where you can't buy Coca-Cola. Okay, you show me one country in the world that doesn't have golden arches, and I wouldn't be surprised if there isn't a McDonald's on Antarctica somewhere in there. Basically, what America does is America sells Americanism, and they masquerade this idea of democracy. Now, if you want to hear a ironic joke, okay. A country that isn't a democracy is traveling around the world forcing democracy on foreign nations. America obviously is a constitutional republic, and yeah, sure, you've got the whole democratic principle in there, but the fact is the two countries that are side by side always in the Middle East and like Afghanistan and Iraq are Britain and America. One's a monarchy, and the other one is a constitutional republic, and yet we're trying to enforce democracy in the world as if it's something that is ours and we've got it and we know what we're doing and ours is just better than everybody else. And so we just want to wax lyrical with our evangelizing our political system and our political structure. Doesn't matter how messed up we look to the rest of the world, you know. I mean, it's it's hypocrisy, and I'm blaming both of our countries here. We are both Britain and America since World War II. We can hold our heads high on World War II. Since then, really, what you've seen is, yes, you've seen the fall of the British Empire. You've seen America step up and lead it to the point where, through trade, you tried buying a barrel of oil for anything other than US with anything other than US dollars. It's not going to happen. That's actually probably the main reason why the Iraq War happened, was because Saddam Hussein wanted to start selling oil with euros. You can't lose that source of revenue. So America is completely self-sufficient with oil. The fact that oil is sold around the world as a commodity with US dollars is a continual source of income, regardless of whether any of it finds its destination on US shores. The entire infrastructure over the whole of that has to be sustained. And the way that they're doing it is by destabilizing the Middle East, placing those bases that you spoke of in there, and basically setting up tyrannical regimes so that they can later go in and destabilize that nation and topple a tyrannical government. And we've seen it time and time again. And unfortunately, when it comes to really the main source of that, you've also got to go back to Britain, who basically replaced the current Iranian regime in power because we knew that we could get a better oil deal from these current people in there. So honestly, the best thing that Britain and America could do, and we're not going to, is bow out of the entire thing, say, sorry, this was a horrible experiment that went terribly wrong. Here's your, please don't take reprisal actions. Here's your compensation. We're sorry. Let's be friends. It's not going to happen. Unfortunately, we've got ourselves into a situation now where we are responsible in that area for maintaining a certain amount of the peace that is enjoyed in nations like Iraq and Afghanistan, etc., etc. And if you want to see how the long-term effects of us pulling out would actually look, and I mean a complete pullout, look at Britain. It left India, and look at India and Pakistan, and now Bangladesh as well. More than 500,000 people have died in a 60, nearly 70-year-long war between India and Pakistan that has seen both countries point nuclear weapons at each other. And that is entirely the fault of the British government. We went in, we took over, we ruled tyrannically. We could have kept India as a vassal state. We could have respected their people, and we could be in a situation now where India would be on the same par with Canada, and the Commonwealth of Nations would probably be the strongest economy in the world. unfortunately, because tyranny follows deception, and deception comes from the pursuit of power. What we have there is a completely vicious part of the world, and yet it is called the Garden State, okay, internationally. It's Kashmir. I recommend Googling photographs of Kashmir. It's some of the most beautiful land you could ever imagine, and yet it is littered with corpses. It's drowned with blood as a result of Britain, just rather than gently pulling out, placing people in power. What we did was violently just upped and left and said, fine, do it your own way. And what was left was a bloodbath as countries separated and split. I mean, India and Pakistan was one nation at that point. And this is something that I don't think Britain could ever learn from its history. If it did, we would do things a lot differently now. But it is certainly something that America started off by seeing where the British Empire was going wrong and decided to do something about it. And I truly, truly hope that America will drain the swamp, so to speak, of those who will profit from basically lies and deception. So, and I have to say, everything that we're seeing right now in Iran, we've all seen it before. We saw it with Vietnam. We saw it with the Iraq War. We saw it with the Iraq War Part 2. We saw it with Afghanistan. And nobody at all is pointing any guns at Saudi Arabia, where the majority of the trouble is coming from. Because Saudi Arabia is one of those nations that very, very cleverly says, we're going to keep our enemies close, our friends close, and our enemies even closer, because we need to be under absolutely no false assumptions here. Saudi Arabia sees Britain and America as enemies that they do trade with and make money from, rather than nations that they would class as allies, you know. And we have an incredibly destabilized Middle East. It has been ever since Britain went in and started pushing forcing its way around. And honestly, other than diplomacy and maybe a little bit of help from Putin, I can't see anything changing.
That's
yeah.
That's some really interesting context. And, if you're a fan of the show, you obviously know that, we talk a lot about how the U.S., basically is a perpetrator in a lot of this crisis that we have in the Middle East. And it's very interesting and refreshing to hear your perspective, being from Britain, and kind of joining in on that culpability. And I think that's context that I think a lot of our listeners that, follow the show specifically for our geopolitics and for the stuff that we cover in the Middle East, I think will find very, very, very fascinating. I also,
Mommy taught you well.
Yeah,
she really did. Sorry, carry on.
No, I was just going to say, and I found it fascinating how, you make a lot of comparisons between, the United States and Britain and the UK, and how closely joined we are, even though we had that little bit of a split up in 1776, we've still been intertwined so deeply over the years. And I find that so interesting, especially within the frame of context of your story here, which is something that I do want to get back to, because you pointed out a lot of really interesting topics on this. And, I got to say, Henry kind of pointed it out before, I tend to be on the mommy side of the divorce, right? And that's just me being open and honest. And I find it, fun to have these kind of conversations. And I think your experience is pretty valuable to talk about, especially, for the U.S. folks here that are, thinking about these domestic policies, about immigration and things like that. And it's funny that you bring up how closely aligned Britain and the United States are. And nevertheless, you as a Brit become deported, and I just wanted to kind of unpack a few things that you said early on that I've just been holding
Sure.
on to, because your speech on the Middle East was not worth stopping for that.
Sorry.
No, it was really good. It's such great content. So like, I just let you run with it. But I wanted to get back to that kind of the point of the show, and highlighting your experience, because this is something that we don't hear super often. When we talk about immigration, especially nowadays, the culture is around illegal aliens, and frankly, it's around people of color, right? So black, brown, Muslims, what have you, and you pointed out one stat that's absolutely true that I want to reiterate. Obama did deport well more people than Trump at this point. I think to that point, Trump, if elected again, would probably beat that. If not just because he wants to beat Obama and everything, even if it's negative things. But I think the one point of context that I want to color here is that while Obama might have deported more people, I think the combination of deportation and this racially charged divisiveness is what makes it so bad under the Trump administration. We know that during his inaugurations, his speech when he was saying he was running for president, I mean, he's calling out Mexicans as being rapists and murderers and the like.
Wait, let me jump in here, man.
We've had some debates on this.
Let me jump in here.
Go for it.
I just want to be clear. What Trump said, because we've debated on this before, he did not say they're rapists, they're murderers, they're XYZ. He said,
some might be good people.
He said, and I'm not a Trump sycophant at all. Everyone knows that I am not a Trump sycophant. I hate on him when I think he's doing something wrong. I give him praise when he does something I like. I don't have any attachment on a personal level to politicians, except probably Ron Paul, which I'm probably definitely guilty of. However, what he did say is that they're not sending our best people. They're sending their rapists, their murderers. So he didn't say Mexicans are rapists and murderers. He said they're not sending their best people.
Well, they're not sending anyone. They're coming.
They're not. No, the Mexican government is literally not sending Mexicans to.
Well, that's kind of the point. That's kind of the point that I'm pointing out. Like the insinuation that that Mexico is sending these people is kind of misinformed and wrong. And to use, to say that, to generalize the population of people that are immigrating illegally, admittedly, to the United States as rapists and murderers, I think is just patently false and just frankly annoying. And what I want to point out, though, is that, when Obama was deporting all these people, he was adhering to the laws, right? Anthony, I know that you said, yourself, admittedly, that you overstayed a visa, right? You were here illegally, and admittedly, if it was up to you, you would deport you too, right? And that's just following the laws that are put. Now, we can have a debate about immigration, generally speaking, and about how we should, handle things like visas, and how, the process of getting a green card could be changed in ways. And frankly, I find it a shame. I mean, you learned a trade here, right? Painting. I'm pretty sure you're dope at it, right? And it's a shame we can't take advantage of that now, right? For at least for another 8 years, I can't get my house painted by you, and that sucks.
Yeah. Do you know what sucks even more? Okay. America can't get its hands on my tax money either.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm in a country now where you don't have the right to pull your children out of, K-12 doesn't exist. Okay. You do not have the right to pull your children out of class if you, let's say, you don't agree with a 5-year-old child being taught about cross-gender politics and homosexual relations, heterosexual relations, even. Okay, let's say you want your child to be splashing around in the play water, coming home with pictures made with paint and sand and noodles, and and you want your child to enjoy their childhood. Okay, it is illegal for you to prevent your child from having this kind of exposure to something that Arguably, I would say an 12-year-old is too young to learn about. Okay. My tax-paying money funds that same education being forced on children, and child services will be called. Children will be put into foster care because parents are teaching their children the other side of certain arguments. And that's the side of Britain that you don't hear about because we don't shout about it. You know, one of the things the thing I love most about America is that, yeah, America has problems, and you're very honest in telling the entire world each one of those problems and laboring the point endlessly. Uh, Statistically speaking, Britain, from a per capita point of view, Britain probably deports more people than Obama and Trump put together. The fact is, in this country, we disappear people in the night because we learned how to do things sneaky. I think Obama, I mean, look, I keep going back to that photograph in my mind. I can't get it out of my head of those children in cages. And we've all waxed lyrical and hyped up about it. And then we see that it was taken in 2014 under Obama, who was also operating under the law. And I don't care if you're going to mommy or if you're going to daddy. I don't care what your politics are. I don't care what anybody's politics are. Who cares? Okay, it's divisive, and it's basically a position that's set up to set one side against the other. Okay, and that is how Sun Tzu told everybody to go for power. He said, "Divide and conquer." Was it Sun Tzu? The
Yep.
Art of War? Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. Okay, so you two are having this wonderful debate that's going on for years and years and years over immigration, yada yada, and all these different little things. And what we're actually doing right now is we're buying into a narrative that does separate black from white. It does separate Christian from Muslim. It does make everybody hate Israel. It does make all
Mhm.
of this happen. And basically, the Middle East are looking at us and they're thinking, do you know what? We don't actually need to divide and conquer. They're doing it to themselves.
Mhm.
I mean, seriously, this whole issue with, I mean, okay, right. Let's just stick on topic on immigration.
Sure.
Okay, are there illegal immigrants in America?
Yes.
There are.
Many.
Have they been given count? Because many of them have been there for decades.
Yes.
Have they been given countless opportunities to naturalize, legalize, and become full, in many cases, US citizens with every right that a US citizen has bestowed upon them?
I
Yes,
mean,
they have.
I'm in that, and on that point, I tend to disagree with you. I think I know many illegal immigrants. You know,
Hmm.
I have a friend who's married an immigrant,
Okay.
has been paying their taxes and has been going through the process of trying to become a naturalized citizen. It is much more difficult now to go
Yeah.
through legal processes than
Yeah.
it is, than it
Okay.
was in the past. And that
Well,
that
this.
that point on it, I think we need to be able to, have a sober
Mm,
discussion about what and why immigration is good. I was reading
yeah.
through one of Henry's tweets. He retweeted Trump on an issue of ASAP Rocky, the rapper, and how he was going to go back and trying to help him out, get him out of Sweden because he's in jail right now. And I was scrolling through the comments on this, and I came across a video from Vox that I think is really, really awesome. And if we have the opportunity, I want to be able to post it. But it was in 1943 video that was made by the U.S. military trying to prevent fascism. Right, we're talking about this in the context of World War II here, and there's an immigrant in the crowd, and there's this guy, and he's I guess campaigning, and he's saying all these things like we gotta get rid of all the Catholics and get rid of all the Negroes and get rid of all these other things. And there's this white man, American man in the crowd, and he's kind of nodding his head to most of these things. And then the politician guy, he mentions, oh, and get rid of all the Masons. And now this American guy happened to be a Mason, right?
mm,
And he was taken aback. He said, well, that's me. I'm a Mason. What's wrong with the Masons, right? And this is, kind of alluding to your divisiveness around the immigration thing. So the immigrant that was in the crowd with him starts talking to the Mason, and he says, among many other things, and I'll try to quote it as best as I can. He says, we humans are not born with prejudice. They're made for us by someone who wants something. Somebody's going to get something out of it, and it isn't going to be you. And I think that's super important, because when we're talking about this immigration issue, right, the question isn't should we or should we not have immigration. I think everybody's on board with immigration. Our entire country is a nation of immigrants, right?
Yeah.
But when we try to make these very specific distinctions that are around race, that are around religion, that are around these different sectarian divides, that's when we get into this dicey territory, right? This is when we start seeing people try to impart something onto you, right? They're trying to impart their prejudices against you because they want to get something out of it, right? They want something. And I think that, on the immigration topic, yeah, there are millions of illegal immigrants that want to become Americans, that want to lawfully, they're paying their taxes, that love this country, sometimes arguably more than the people that are here, they're bitching about the country, like you pointed that out early on. And I just find it, exactly this, just because you feel included in the bubble that you're in, that's levying, criticisms against other groups. Like me personally, I tend to fall into the left-leaning bubble, and a lot of that bubble tends to say, oh, Trump's a racism, white supremacy is rampant in this country, and it's trying to divide Democrats and Republicans. On the right hand side, because I try to stick myself in those bubbles too, just to figure out what's going on that side. It's all about how we're losing this purity of America, and that all of these people that are coming into this country are ruining America. And I find it disgusting on both sides in a lot of ways. And to your point, definitely think that this divisiveness, it's just certainly not helpful. But nevertheless, we're having a conversation. Nevertheless, we as Americans, we point out our faults and our flaws quite loudly. It's just a matter of having, like you said, that mediator, the lawyer between that divorce, the mom and the dad, right? Like, who is the lawyer? Who's going to be the lawyer?
Japan.
Yeah, right.
Amen. I'll second that. But okay, I mean, actually.
Oh, go ahead, Anthony. I was just going to say that there's a lot of Asian immigration. I think there's a lot of Asian immigration policies that were put in place in like the 1920s and 1930s that still affect like Asian immigration. I know it's really difficult for like a Japanese person to immigrate over to the U.S., but that's just completely off topic. Go ahead with what you were saying.
Yeah, okay. You brought up politics. I would describe myself as being classically liberal. My stepmom is black. My brother and my sisters are mixed race. I went to a school in the city of Leicester. So if you guys actually follow soccer at all, you're sad. But if you actually do follow soccer, we won the Premiership a couple of years ago. Leicester did. And I was in a school where I was the only white British boy in my class. Everybody else was of Indian descent, apart from one girl who was also white. When people call me racist for supporting Trump, I just like to sort of like laugh at them. I don't even bother explaining this side of my life because it's not really anybody's business. But I would actually call myself classically liberal. And one of the reasons why I still support Trump and why I still actually agree with the majority of his things is because once you get past the poison pen that is his Twitter feed, if he could shut up long enough to
Agreed.
allow his policies to speak for him, I honestly think that the majority of people in America would actually say that what America has done and achieved in the last 3 years is incredible. We haven't discussed the issue of the wall. and I just want to, and I know that you must have spoken about this many times, but on the issue of the wall, there's one thing that comes up that actually makes building that wall really, really sensible. Uh, Tens and tens and tens of thousands of people from South America have died crossing that desert trying to get to the US. Tens and tens and tens and thousands of women and children have been molested and raped along along the US border. If you build a wall, you funnel all of that traffic that would be traveling by foot through gateways. Okay. Now, is that going to stop some of these atrocities that are committed? Possibly, possibly not. I mean, I read a report 2 weeks ago, and it was probably quite old, but they found a 10-year-old girl crossing the border. They separated her from her parent, and she was found with the semen of 10 different men inside her body. So when Trump turns around and says that Mexicans, pedophiles and rapists, and I know I'm taking that out of context, and yeah, we've already discussed that, but let's just say he did say that. Given the truth that, given some of the truths that ICE is reporting, given some of the things that they found, given some of the, I mean, look, America is very responsive. Okay, American people, they see it, they make a snapshot judgment, and they go, yeah, and everybody's like that. Okay, that's just America. That's just where you are. That's part of your, like, yeah, and it doesn't matter what color you are as well. That's what America does. You're like, no, this is wrong. Stop that, and let's go and do something about it. And arguably, I would argue that one of your most endearing qualities as a nation, as a people, that separates America from the rest of the world is being used divisively against you by people who are craving political power and office. And the fact is, when the Democrats come to power again, the Republicans are going to be doing exactly the same thing.
Agreed.
We saw that under Obama. We saw the US government close because you guys couldn't work out what it was that you wanted. Now we've got Trump. We're seeing the Democrats getting their revenge because you can't quite work out what you want, or you can't work out. No, you know exactly what you want. You just don't really want the other side to be the one who does it, which then takes us right back to this whole divorce analogy. It's like, yes, I do want you to go to a private school, but I don't want your daddy to pay for it. And this is the same, and this is the thing, right? If we don't have somebody who is utterly bipartisan, and actually there's an amazing Democrat politician. Hear what I'm saying now, supporting Trump here and saying there's an amazing Democrat politician, and he tweeted a few days ago, actually, I wish I'd remembered who it was, but he actually tweeted and he said something along the lines of, Trump is absolutely right on this point, and we need to fully support this issue. Okay. And actually, I think this could actually be how we met, because I then tweeted, we need to keep a hold of this guy. He is, he's actually completely rightly looking at what most benefits America rather than the political system. And unfortunately, I think there needs to be, I mean, we all thought, or I certainly thought, that Trump was going to be the political revolution that America needed. Instead, I think what he's doing is he's actually setting the battlegrounds. He's actually drawing the battlegrounds for the political revolution, not warring revolution, but the political revolution that there needs to be. And why not bring back the populace? Why not bring back the popularists? So you had the Democrats on the one side trying to keep a hold of oh, slavery. You had the Republicans being against slavery. And this is part of American history that most Americans never get a hold of. And that is that there was actually a third party that grew up out of the post-Civil War era when white and black American farmers started pooling their crops together in order to actually get more money from selling their by selling their crops. And so over maybe a decade or so, what you actually found was bars for a beautiful time in America were selling beers that were bought by a black farmer for a white farmer, and beers that were bought by a white farmer for a black farmer, because it was in the common interest and the common good for everybody to actually work together in order to be able to feed their families. And out of that came a political party, and exactly the same thing happened to those guys. They were called anti-Semitic, they were called racist, some of them were called homosexuals, and basically you had it right there. But because of that whole constantly going for power, the strongest, most powerful office in the world right now is arguably in Washington, D.C. Although, because there's so much backbiting and sniping going on, I'm still going to say it's the Kremlin. But if you guys could actually bury the hatchet somewhere, walk off, buy each other a pint, okay, have a beer together, sit down and say, do you know what? All of this is just suiciding our nation, okay? And there it is. I mean, I think the only real way to solve the American system is to invite a third party to come in.
I can't agree with you more. I mean, Henry and I talk about how much we don't identify with the only two political parties that we have, and how disillusioned we are with those. We did a whole episode on our 100th on just like taking a quiz online to see what parties we lined up with, and found just some absolutely ridiculous, findings there. I think while we disagree on certain points, I think we agree on one main point, and that is that the divisiveness. We need to come together on something, come together for a common good, come together to understand that there's more to do. Henry, I'm gonna kick this off to you because I'm getting a bit of a siren here.
You're getting a hell of a lot of sirens, bro. All right, so yeah. I completely agree with you, man. That's why we had set up the show in the first place, because holy shit, now I'm getting it. All right, back to Danny.
It's even worse on my side. Anthony, you wanna lead us off? You wanna close this out?
Yeah, peace is essential. I'm waiting to see if MI5 is going to come knocking on my door, because it sounds to me like they don't like this broadcast. Yeah, basically, men, women, children in America are the reason that the government exists. And we are people who need successful government. I think at the moment Donald Trump is giving America success, but is killing it with really bad opinion. I think that yes, there is a system in place for migration. Legal migration is a glorious thing. Countries are able to grow new ideologies, new opportunities, new businesses, and new technologies come out of migration that's done legally. I'm here to say that illegal immigration is not a good thing. If people are there and they are like myself, taking advantage of a few broken issues in a system that really does need to be tightened up as part of a bipartisan effort, then there is a hole in the sieve that is the American legal system, the same that there's a hole in the sieve that is the British legal system. I absolutely love America. I pray for America. I'm a Christian. In jail, I did prison ministry. You know, I saw really, really difficult situations, often situations where people have put themselves in that. All I can do is say that I love America, I pray for America, and God bless America.
God bless America.
God bless America, man. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was wonderful to hear your perspective. It was very unique, and I think a lot of people are going to get a lot of value out of it, just because, you know, when you say British deported Trump supporter, I don't think most people, I don't know what people are going to expect, but I think you brought some some really excellent context. Just Middle East to U.S. relationship with Britain, as well as just the U.S. immigration system, because Lord knows that we have our problems, but you definitely bring up some very valid points about the wall, about legal immigration, illegal immigration, and we're really happy that we had a chance to speak to you about this.
Thank you very much. Could you do me one thing?
Absolutely.
Could you send me the link to this?
Absolutely. We'll send you everything.
Thank you so much.
We're gonna wrap this up right now, and we're just like the recording of this up right now. But we'll send you everything. Is there anything that you're writing or anything that you want to plug in, or like a Twitter handle or anything like that?
Yeah, sure. If you guys want to add me, I'm at Gripping Christ. And yeah, that's on Twitter. So that's GRIPPINGCHRIST, because it's the only way you can keep hold of God. And yeah, that's pretty much me. If you want to get in touch, let me know that you listened, and I will definitely say hi.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So